Thank you for joining us. One of the essential initiatives, especially at this time in history, is to promote a true image of the State of Israel and its great achievements. Despite being constantly under threat for over 64 years, Israel is in the forefront of innovation and contributes with technology and products that are used by just about everyone, including its Arab neighbors. My point is, far more will be achieved for everyone through peace and coexistence. Our guest today is Larry Behar, an outstanding leader in the Jewish community who is on the board of numerous philanthropic organizations and is also a prominent attorney. He'll share his views on these subjects following these messages.
Healthcare costs are bankrupting America. The cause is federal overregulation. Unless a free market is restored, no one, including government, business, or individuals, will be able to afford the high cost of health care. My new book, Pharmocracy, exposes the corruption that causes needless suffering and death while our nation sinks into financial ruin. The solutions in this book can save Medicare and improve the lives of aging Americans. Pharmocracy provides an irrefutable basis to stop the suffocating impact of healthcare regulation. The benefit will be better medical technology at far lower prices. Fight back against corruption. Pharmocracy shows how we can tear down bureaucratic barriers that push healthcare costs beyond the reach of the American people. We can do it.
This essential book is only $24, and you'll also receive a free subscription to Life Extension magazine. Get your book today.
Don't miss the Atlantis Sensational Summer Special. Book now and your fourth night is free. Plus, receive up to a $400 airfare credit, now including summer travel. And kids stay and eat free. Enjoy a taste of Atlantis Pass valued at over $150 with free drinks and tastings from select Atlantis restaurants. Plus, free unlimited access to the largest water park and casino in the Caribbean. The Atlantis Sensational Summer Special ends soon.
Perhaps you think you know about Israel. But did you know that with a population of only 7 million, less than 1/1000th of the world's population, Israel has developed a range of important technologies that help save lives while helping us to live better ones. For example, the first cell phone was developed by Motorola at their largest R&D center located in Israel. Microsoft, Cisco, and Intel also have major R&D facilities in Israel. An Israeli company, Given, developed an ingestible camera that fits inside a pill and is helping doctors provide better diagnoses and treatment. Israeli scientists also created the first fully computerized, no-radiation diagnostic instrument for breast cancer. Israel has produced major breakthroughs in drip irrigation to reduce water required for agriculture, has led in solar power innovations, and was the only country to begin the 21st century with a net gain in the number of trees, a remarkable achievement for this desert country. There are more scientists per number of workers in Israel than anywhere in the world, each one of whom is busy working on innovations that will improve the health, safety, and productivity of all of us. When you really know about Israel, you'll be amazed at how much this little country is doing to help your life and the lives of the ones you love.
With us now is Larry Behar. Larry, it's a great pleasure to have you on the show. It's been a while.
Thank you, Richard. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning.
You've been involved and still are with so many philanthropic causes. Please tell our viewers a little bit about all of these organizations and causes that you belong to.
Well, Richard, I think it's really important that every generation be there to support Israel. And I've had the privilege of being able to work with and to assist in development of many of the Jewish agencies that are available here in Florida and across the world, and particularly with a focus on Israel. Currently, I'm serving on the board of the foundation of the Jewish Federation of Broward, but I've also had the privilege of chairing the Jewish National Fund here in South Florida, the chairmanship of the Israel Bonds Association, and Neve Mikhael, where we're developing a pet therapy center.
How have these causes and organizations evolved over the years? For example, Jewish National Fund 100 years ago was initially mainly involved with the planting of trees and building roads all over Israel and other things such as that. How have things changed in the different organizations that you lead or support?
In particular, the Jewish National Fund has really developed a great deal. Not only is it involved in water reclamation, but it's also involved in a lot of water recycling and water storage, water retention, which has, of course, helped Israel a great deal in terms of balance of power in the Middle East, because water is power in the Middle East. We've seen a great development in not only the tree planting components, but also in road building and infrastructure within Israel. The Jewish National Fund has been very, very active in that regard. Also, I've had the privilege of seeing a lot of reservoirs being built in Israel to be able to benefit not only the agriculture part of Israel, but also the tourism industry and the development. So the Jewish National Fund is involved in many different things, including, of course, firefighting within the state of Israel.
That reminds me of the devastating forest fires in Israel in 2010, which were the worst in Israel's history, killing over 40 people and millions of trees. You mentioned water shortages being another volatile subject associated with power, and I remember actually how Syria, before the 1967 war, how the Syrians were excavating to divert the water flowing into the Sea of Galilee, the Yam Kinneret, and I'd like to ask you if technology has improved the situation since then.
Well, currently what Israel is doing is that it's using a lot of the technology that it's developed through many of the universities that are very, very strong in the development of creation of water right from the air. They're developing through the Weizmann Institute, Hebrew University, and Ben Gurion University of the Negev. They're developing systems to be able to allow Israel to reclaim water from humidity that's contained in the air and to develop potable water. In areas where the water is not potable, they use it for recycling and for agriculture in drip irrigation. Now, the importance of this is twofold. Number one, it allows Israel to become more self-sustaining in terms of its own consumption. And number two, it allows Israel to be able to export its technology to countries around the world which needs that kind of technology for its own people. For example, recently, Israel has developed strategic relationships with the country of China. Why? Because China has many parts of the country that are arid and where there are populations that need the drip irrigation or water recycling components to be able to create crops and food for their own people. So as a result, this little country Israel is now become a big friend of China, the big country, to be able to allow that development as a result of its technology.
Technology and progress certainly do offer the hope for a better future for everyone, and actually should really lead to peace if people would be more rational and resolve differences in this world in mutual cooperation. You know, how inspiring the Middle East could be and should be.
That's true. And, you know, Israel is a light unto the nations. And recently, for example, Israel has been touted as one of the leaders in solar energy. Ben Gurion University in the Negev has just opened one of the largest advanced solar technology facilities in the world. But 40% of that project was funded by Chinese government and Chinese interests. So as a result, you can see that there's a development of use of alternative energies to be able to develop both in Israel and around the world.
Mentioning China, we just had Professor Xu Xin of Nanjing University here on our show, telling us about the fascinating history of Jewish life in China, which is not well known to many people, and how refuge and safety were provided to European Jews before and after World War II. Please tell us about your interest in their Judaic Studies program.
Well, it's a fascinating component that's brought a light into Florida. Professor Xu Xin, of course, is the director of Judaic Studies at Nanjing University in Nanjing, China. And upon reading an article in the B'nai B'rith magazine, of all places, I was able to determine his history and to be able to invite him to our community here in Fort Lauderdale to be able to speak about the association of the Chinese community with the Jewish community. And it comes to pass that Dr. Xu Xin has 35 PhD and master's students who are working with him. The purpose of the Institute of Judaic Studies, as supported by the Glaser Institute in California, is to be able to assist the Chinese culture in preserving itself as it's going through major changes and evolution and modernization. The reason for this is that they have concluded that the Jewish people have a formula of generation through generation to be able to preserve its culture and traditions, and this is what the Chinese are looking to preserve as well as it evolves into modernization at this time.
Fascinating. Let's talk some more about the water shortage situation. What comes to mind are the exciting solutions proposed years ago, such as the Med-Dead project to excavate a canal from the Mediterranean to replenish the Dead Sea and create clean hydroelectric energy in the process. Are they ever going to reconsider and move forward with that rather exciting project?
I had seen the plans for this Med-to-Dead process, and it was quite extensive. That project, to my understanding, is on hold at this time. It's unfortunate because the Dead Sea, of course, is shrinking more and more every day. However, I do not see any plans to be able to excavate at this time, to be able to allow. It's interesting because, as you know, the Dead Sea is the deepest part that's visible to man on the planet Earth. And it would have been relatively, from an engineering standpoint, relatively easy to be able to bring water in as in form of gravity. However, unfortunately, the cost of doing so at this time, as well as the defense needs of Israel at this time, with the threats that it's faced and is facing, has precluded it from going forward on this project at this time that I know of.
I'd like to ask you about other concerns you're involved with, in addition to that of Israel's security.
You know, I'm always amazed by folks here in the United States who have not had the opportunity to come and visit Israel. It's really so important for people to get on a plane and to go to Israel and to come and visit it firsthand. Recently, I had an opportunity to celebrate a very important visit in Israel with my family. And what was amazing was the development of Israel in terms of its, not only its culture and its history, but also its development as a country in terms of communication. Israel today, you can travel from one end of the country to the next in less than an hour and a half, and all this is based on infrastructure of roads and highways and facilities that they've been able to do. And as you know, Israel is on a path to creating a grid within the country to make all the vehicles electric within the next 5 years, through what's called the swap battery process. And this is going to be very exciting as a template, not only for Israel, but also for many parts of the United States where the dependence on oil is so prevalent. However, Israel has recognized that and is now using a combination of alternative energies to be able to remove its own dependence, in addition to the natural gas finds that it's made offshore in a very, very near future. So Israel is doing that through a combination of participation of Israel bonds in terms of the bonds that are used for the construction of infrastructure, airports. As you know, Richard, there's a new airport that has been designed and is in the process of being constructed in Eilat. Eilat will become the second largest airport in Israel, international airport, and will be receiving visitors from all over the world onto the Red Sea.
Eilat. What a beautiful and exciting city and location. You know, I remember interviewing the mayor there many years ago. But I'd like to change subject and ask you about energy concerns and the new offshore discoveries near Israel and Cyprus. This is really very good news, and there's talk of international cooperation, but also concerns of squabbling and conflict.
That's true. Israel has recently found a large deposit of natural gas just offshore from its own land, and is now changing the balance of requirements within its own country with regard to energy sources. Natural gas is a very inexpensive source of energy and is going to allow the country to be able to develop on its own in that regard, in addition to the other alternative energies that it's using. You know, as you know, Israel is one of the few countries in the Middle East that does not sit on a pot of oil, and therefore has to use a lot of technology to be able to support itself per se. I'm not familiar with the negotiations with Cyprus, but I do know that the technology that's being developed to develop the natural gas from offshore is going to be developed very quickly and is going to be very helpful to the Israel economy.
Larry, this is very interesting, and I'd like us to continue, but we have to pause for these messages. We'll be right back. One of the main areas you are an expert in is that of immigration, and Israel is a land of immigrants, Aliyah to Israel, historically with immigration from all corners of the earth. How is Israel managing with these vast numbers of immigrants over the years?
Israel is a welcoming country. As you know, it has the right of return to the country for all Jews from around the world. But it seems that it always happens in waves, in large waves of immigrants, whether it's from the 50s or the 60s or the 90s. When the Russians came, the Ethiopians came, Israel welcomed it. And what's interesting is that those immigrants really have been the genesis of the revitalization of the country and to be able to ensure its longevity. As you know, military service is required in Israel, and therefore that presence of immigrants coming into the country is so important to its security and its intellectual development. Israel has the second largest number of IPOs on the New York Stock Exchange, and it's not by accident. It's because there are so many ideas that are created within Israel, and many of them come from immigrants who 5-10 years ago were destitute. And through the help of the Israel government and social services, they find their lives again, and to be able to re-find their lives again within the state of Israel. And it's just fascinating to see them integrate within this little country to be able to support themselves and to support the Jewry. You know, many years ago, American Jews and Jews from around the world used to think that they were the ones supporting Israel. Well, today, Israel is supporting Jews from around the world. It's a really interesting phenomenon and a shift of dynamics because there are so many ideas that come from Israel, and there's so much intellectual and moral support that come from Israel that we as Jews around the world really depend on Israel. That has to be our center. You know, we may have all been born in different cities, but we were all born in Jerusalem. And one way or another, we all have a connection with that country and that feeling, which is so important. I was born in Cairo and in 1952, and we had to leave as Jews. The Jewish population went from 100,000 to less than 100 in 10 years. The conversation around the dinner table used to be, well, where are you going and where are you going to be relocated? So we have lived the immigrant experience already several times. And as Jews, this is not an unusual situation. But we forget how quickly things can change and we become placid and complacent. It's not the case in Israel. Israel is always on its guard, always having to defend its borders, always concerned about the neighborhood, and always concerned about the security of its people.
Unfortunately, we cannot ignore the question of Israel's security as it faces constant threats to its existence, and the fact that Israel's neighbors choose to perpetuate the conflict now for over 60 years, instead of accepting and recognizing Israel's right to exist and making real peace. How much more the entire region and all the people there would gain in peace and mutual cooperation? What are your thoughts on why, after all of these decades, Israel's neighbors still largely seem to be dedicated and interested in Israel's destruction?
It's a very good question. I don't really know why they're dedicated to the destruction of Israel. My own personal feeling is that there's a human envy component that's associated with it, rather than assist and develop the whole neighborhood to have it rise. There is a competitiveness and an envy that permeates throughout the neighborhood. That's very unfortunate, but this is the situation as it is, and unfortunately Israel has to remain very rigid. I'm often very puzzled by the reaction of the world community to the wall that Israel has had to build around itself to protect itself from terrorist activities and errant target shooting. The wall is not really a wall. If people actually see it and see the length of the concrete wall versus the barbed wire wall, you'll understand the difference. There is actually a very small component of the wall that is actually cement, and that is used in areas where the snipers have a certain angle to be able to shoot at Israeli citizens from different angles. But the vast majority of the wall is not a wall. It's a barbed wire fence that separates the parts of Israel from other parts of Arab neighborhoods that are less friendly. And those areas are tracked regularly by the IDF, by the Israel Defense Forces.
These barriers, walls and fences have successfully protected Israeli citizens from so many terrorist attacks. And speaking of fences, I remember being on the Golan Heights years ago and standing on a road, and on one side there was a barbed wire fence with signs saying, "Danger, mines," and on the other side were lush vineyards with grapes. At that particular location, the Muslims had planted landmines, planting death. On the other side of the same road, the Jews had planted life, grapes, and both claimed to love the land. What are your thoughts on that odd, sad paradox?
I think it's fascinating. I had the privilege of being in the Golan Heights last year and seeing the bravery of Israeli soldiers in defending its positions from the Syrian attack forces on the Golan Heights. And while there appears to be some flexibility by the Israeli government with regard to the Golan Heights, it would be a real shame and catastrophic, in my opinion, to return it to Syria. The reason being that the Golan Heights have now evolved into a tremendous economic force. The Jezreel Valley that leads into the Golan Heights is now a green zone. The Golan Heights has incredible wineries and oil and consumption of oil facilities that are growing table oil. So you have a lot of issues that are involved in the Golan Heights and its proximity to the Kinneret. To be able to have that returned to Syria would be a major problem in our opinion.
In addition, really there's no history of any Arab civilization living in that area as far as I know. But if one looks at archaeological excavations in Katsrin on the Golan and elsewhere that have revealed indisputable proof of Jewish life there, dating back to biblical times in fact, and many people regard it as preposterous for the Syrians today to allege this is their land, from which they used in fact to bombard Israeli settlements up until the 1967 war. Another point is they don't really need tiny Israel, and the Arab countries have more land actually than the entire United States of America. So, and skeptics also point out what happened in Gaza and how Israel gave land for peace and all of these beautiful modern greenhouses, and kind of the very next day the Arabs smashed and trashed them and then started firing endless rockets at Israel. So how can one really realistically expect there to be peace in the Middle East if there's generosity and goodwill on one side and very questionable intentions on the other, Larry?
It's a very good question. I wish I had the answers to all those questions, but I'm always puzzled by the few moments in time when there was peace in the Gaza Strip, and all of a sudden that piece of real estate became one of the hottest pieces of real estate on the globe. If you recall, many years ago, when there was talk of a settlement between the Palestinians and Israel, this is going back about 15 years ago, there was a situation where all of a sudden the Gaza Strip became extremely popular. As you know, it's the densest place on earth in terms of human population. And it's always been puzzling why Egypt has not wanted to absorb the Gaza Strip within its own proximate territory, or why they never wanted to make peace. If they did make peace, that piece of real estate would become extremely valuable. Of course, the choices made by the Israeli government are the choices made by the government at that time. And we always think about David Ben-Gurion and his leadership and vision for the state of Israel to be able to allow the country to survive through its own wit and manpower.
Before we conclude this interview, I'd like to ask you to share with our audience how you see the future. What solution do you see ahead that hopefully may become a reality?
You know, Ben-Gurion used to say that if you don't believe in miracles, you're not a realist. And I have to believe that that is the case for Israel before, during, and after our lifetimes. We have seen an evolution of a small state grow into a blossoming country with all the technology, manpower, and development that any country on earth would be very proud to have. Of course, the social services are still a challenge within the country, making sure that its people are fed, making sure that the lowest in our society are elevated. And this is important for the success of Israel as a country. being able to export and do tikkun olam throughout the world, I think is very, very important, as our predecessors had charged us to do, and as we are doing here today. I'm always amazed when I travel throughout the world, when I see Israelis in various places throughout the world trying to do good in countries that you would really not think that they would be there, bringing their technology, manpower, and their heart to be able to help the world.
Larry, this has been really very interesting. Thank you for being with us today.
It's been my pleasure, Richard.
This concludes our special show for today. From South Florida, I'm Richard Peritz. Thank you for being with us.